These releases would not be happening in a system that is functioning properly. And that is the responsibility of the head of government, who alone is responsible for the machinery of government. These releases are a result of a government that does not release information in a controlled and timely manner to Parliament or its committees. These releases are a symptom of a national security and intelligence system that is not working.
Former Governor General David Johnston is just days away from making a decision about whether or not Canada needs a public inquiry into foreign election interference. As you just saw there, though, Conservative MP Michael Chong says intelligence leaks prove our national intelligence apparatus isn't working. The MP says he only learned of 2-year-old threats to his family after a Globe and Mail report this month. Now, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino has followed through on a promise from the Prime Minister directing CSIS to share threats like that one with politicians. The minister has issued a formal directive that says CSIS will seek wherever possible within the law and while protecting the security and integrity of national security and intelligence operations and investigations to ensure that parliamentarians are informed of threats to the security of Canada directed at them. Richard Fadden is both a former head of CSIS and national security advisor to Prime Ministers Trudeau and Harper. Hi, Mr. Fadden. Good to see you.
Pleasure to be with you.
I appreciate you making the time, as always. What do you think of this directive?
Well, I think it's rather unfortunate that it was considered to be necessary. I would have thought that anybody in Canada, you or me or anybody else who was threatened, would receive necessary attention from CSIS, the police, and whomever. Doubly so for dealing with parliamentarians. But I guess the government felt, after all of the kerfuffle relating to the case of Mr. Chong, that it was necessary. It certainly will make it very clear to CSIS that they have to take these things seriously. I still have difficulty believing that they did not in the first instance. But not having seen the intelligence, it's very hard to come down, in a black and white fashion.
Yeah, I understand that, and I guess it's with the same sort of nuance that I ask you. Sort of what has perplexed me is. My guess is, and you would know better than me, that ultimately CSIS makes a determination. Does this threat meet a certain bar in order to convey it to A, the PCO, B, the National Security Advisor, or C, the individual themselves? Is there any reason that you can imagine that if there was a threat to an MP and his family, that CSIS wouldn't automatically inform them?
I have difficulty coming up with an example, but, they cannot report every single instance. If, for example, you and I go for a cup of coffee after this broadcast and we start talking about people and one of us says, this guy really needs to be shaken up. Well, there are these kinds of conversations and meetings in bars across the country all the time. So there has to be some judgment brought to bear in all of this. But in truth, when it's directed to an MP, particularly an MP with family in China, particularly an MP who's been critical of China, I cannot imagine why it would not have been kicked up the chain of command.
And it sounds like from the information Michael Chong received, it was somewhat, right? That it did end up going to the Privy Council office. It just didn't make its way to the Prime Minister's desk. What kind of gap would you identify exists there?
Well, I don't quite understand what happens because as a matter of routine, this has been accelerated since 9/11, the sharing of intelligence, because it's not helpful if intelligence agencies keep the stuff themselves. So as a matter of routine, something like this would have gone to the Privy Council office, to the Mounties, I think, to Mr. Mendicino's department, possibly Foreign Affairs. And in each case, where there's a minister, there's usually a single staffer who's cleared to look at the material and would get it as well, although that's not universally the case. So given this is the case, and Mr. Chong has said that Ms. Thomas has admitted receiving the material, her office has received the material, either there was a breach in the system or truly the threat level as identified in the intelligence didn't meet the threshold when judgment was brought to bear. I have difficulty understanding why they wouldn't have passed it on in any event as a courtesy because it related to one of Mr. Trudeau's parliamentary colleagues, even though they are not of the same party.
We've kind of watched this all play out very much incrementally over the past number of weeks, who had what information, when did they convey it or they didn't, who actually was privy to it in the end. I'm wondering, taking a step back for a second, as someone who has served in both the capacity as head of CSIS and as National Security Advisor, if you're concerned at all about this kind of thing playing out publicly and its potential impact on the faith Canadians have in the security apparatus in this country?
Well, I think absolutely. I think, the leaking of national security information is, in my view, a bad thing, period. Having said that, now that we have the intelligence, the alleged intelligence, we've got to do something about it. But it doesn't work if people don't believe that we can't keep secrets. And this applies to our allies as well. All of our allies have problems every now and then with national security confidentiality. But this is, you said weeks. I'm beginning to think this has gone on for months now.
Yeah,
at least
true.
it feels as if it has. So I think it is not going to help. And I continue to believe, we've talked about this before, the only way this is really going to get cleared up is if there's a public inquiry. It seems that every week or week and a half, there's a new allegation. Ministers go out and take some discrete step, but they're not looking at it holistically. We're not stepping back, to use your expression, and looking at the whole issue, not just of foreign interference, but, foreign intelligence. Does CSIS have the right tools? Are the right rules in place to ensure sharing? Is the public informed sufficiently about what's going on? I think I've mentioned before to you that, compared to the Australians and the Brits, we don't talk very much about national security. So there is evidence elsewhere that we could talk about it more. And the more we talk about it outside of crisis mode, the more I think people will be aware of the issue and will resist it if it comes to pass.
I'm wondering if you think it would serve the public right now, and obviously one venue for it is the potential for an inquiry, which, by the way, we will hear from former Governor General David Johnston on that in just a few days. But do you think it would serve Canadians to hear, for example, right now from the current NSA or the head of CSIS, both of whom have largely outside of fairly brief committee appearances not spoken a ton directly to the public?
Well, there's a problem here because under our system, the way we run our parliamentary system, Parliament is not entitled to receive classified information. This is not the U.S. Congress. So as long as that is the case, they're restricted by the Security of Information Act. Having said that, the Prime Minister and ministers can waive these confidentiality requirements if they want to. But there has to be a compelling substantive case. I think it would have been good if they'd felt able to say a little bit more, simply by aggregating up the kind of information and providing a little bit more. But we have a small C constitutional issue here. Parliament in Canada is not entitled to receive classified information. And until that's resolved, we have an issue. And if you can't have the NSA or the director of CSIS talk to Parliament, I don't think it's fair to expect them to be able to talk to you or to the public more generally. There's a constitutional dilemma there of some sort, I think.
Fair point, fair point. Okay, Mr. Fadden, I'll leave it there. I appreciate your analysis tonight. Thank you.
My pleasure. Cheers.